Okay, so during today, I will talk about which I believe are the most important characteristics regarding the St. Croix white-haired sheep breed. And also, I would like to discuss the new direction that we have on the small ruminant facility at the experimental station of the University of Virgin Islands. I will explain the new system and the new facilities that we have on the small ruminant facility. And at the final of the presentation, I will give a small summary about the ongoing research and the future research that we are going to conduct on our facilities. So, okay, so it is clear that the St. Croix white-haired sheep has a lot of good characteristics. For example, no sharing, they are not selecting grassers. They have a good temperament. They do really good with hoof. We don't need to do a lot of food trimming, and also they are polled. However, there are other characteristics that make of this breed an optimal breed for the future. For example, the characteristic to be a parasite-resistant breed. I won't go into details because Ray did it, but there are several research that demonstrate that this breed it can be a resistant parasite resistant breed. However, we have other characteristics which I believe for me are the most important, like heat tolerant, the capacity to mitigate the heat in the St. Croix white-haired sheep. Also, that characteristics are really good opportunity to conduct research, and then I will, during my presentation, I will explain why. So Dr. Godfrey, or Bob, who did an excellent job during his tenure at the University of Virgin Islands, conducted several research regarding the heat stress and the St. Croix white-haired sheep. In this occasion, he was trying to evaluate the impact of breed, pregnancy, and hair coat on body temperature and sweating rate on hair sheep breed under tropical conditions. So again, St. Croix is in the Caribbean. We have a tropical condition. The weather is the same the whole year. So we have heat stress the whole year, right? So in this occasion, he used the St. Croix white-haired sheep, but also he used the old crossbreed, or the crossbreed between St. Croix and Dorset that Dr. Godfrey developed. And then here in one side, we have the temperature, and then on the x-axis, we have the time of the day. And as we can see, the St. Croix white-haired sheep had lower rectal temperature through the day, except for 12 p.m., than the crossbreed. Again, this is one of the several research that demonstrate that the St. Croix white-haired sheep do really well with heat stress. I won't say that the St. Croix white-haired sheep is a heat-tolerant breed because my expertise is heat stress, is the physiology of heat stress, and I believe that we need more information to say that, not just rectal temperature and respiratory rate, but I can say that the St. Croix breed can do very well under heat stress conditions. So another characteristic that the St. Croix has is the characteristic to be a good milking producer, right? So one of the things that I noticed right away I start in this position is that there are a lack of information regarding this specific topic in St. Croix white-haired sheep. So in 2018, Burgos Gonzalez conducted a research to study the milk production and lamb development in St. Croix and Catalin, hair sheep breeds. And in this occasion, again, he used 2 hair breeds. And then here on the table 1, we can see that the body weight and the milk yield did not present significance. However, when we look at the range, that also doesn't have any significance. But when we see the maximum value, we can see a huge difference, right? Where the Catalin produced more milk than the St. Croix. And then that result is attached with the colostrum production, where the Catalin breed produced more colostrum than the St. Croix white-haired sheep. And then here in this graph, we have the milk production for Catalin and St. Croix. And we can see how that lambing and the second week, the Catalin breed had higher milk production than the St. Croix white-haired sheep. So why is this important? We need to remind that we promote this breed as a good milk producer breed. However, I believe that we have to conduct more research to understand the physiology of milk production, colostrum production, and their components in St. Croix white-haired sheep. Also, Dr. Godfrey conducted several research as well with milk production. In this occasion, he was trying to study the lamb growth and milk production on hair and wool sheep in a semi-arid tropical condition, right? In this occasion, he used 3 different breeds. He used the St. Croix, he used a Florida native breed, and the Barbados black belly. And here in this graph, we have the udder volume. And then on the x-axis, we have the days after lambing. And we can observe how the St. Croix white-haired sheep had higher udder volume than the other 2 breeds. However, when we look at the milk weight, no difference was shown. And again, this is a really good opportunity for those people that work with the St. Croix white-haired sheep to develop research to study the milk production, because we are talking about a breed that can give us twins and triplets. However, we need to be sure that the ewe, the St. Croix ewe, can support lambings of twins and triplets. Another what is it? So another characteristic that probably I share the same mentality than the milk production is the meat quality. And this is something more focused on the island, just in St. Croix, right? Dr. Godfrey also conducted a research to study the post-weaning growth and carcass trait in St. Croix white and the Dorper that he developed using a concentrate as a feed. And then when we see at the data, we can see that the Dorper breed, the Dorper crossbreed is the black line. And then we can see how the Dorper crossbreed had higher body weight than the St. Croix white-haired sheep through the study. And not only that, that the St. Croix, we can observe as well that the St. Croix took more days to reach the market weight than the crossbreed between St. Croix and Dorper. However, again, I share the same mentality that I have with the milk production, but in this occasion, it's more focused on the island. I believe that the island needs to improve their meat quality and the meat production. And also when you ask to the farmers about how good is their farm, they don't have an answer for that. So one of the roles that the university has right now is to provide all of this knowledge to the farmers, to the local farmers. In that way, they can be the bigger farmers regarding the St. Croix white-haired sheep, right? So why, with all of that mentioned, why can St. Croix white-haired sheep represent the future? Well, we are talking about a breed that has good characteristics regarding parasite infection. We can say that they can do very well with milk production, meat production, and meat quality. However, we have just one problem, the heat stress, right? So St. Croix in the Caribbean, close to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico also has a heat stress problem. And also I did my PhD at the University of Virgin Islands, at the University of Arizona, where the heat stress also was a problem. So heat stress is a main problem, right? So that is where the new direction at the University of Virgin Islands entered. But first, I would like to explain why heat stress is so important for us. So when we talk about heat stress and lactation, we know that an animal during lactation or a mammary gland, right, during lactation tend to increase in size by 73%. And that is because the mammary gland require more energy to maintain the lactation. And then when heat stress enter into conversation, we can say that an animal is exposed to heat stress during lactation, we can observe a decrease on dry matter intake that will result in a decrease on milk yield production by 50%. But not only that, the blood flow destined to the mammary gland also tend to decrease, affecting the milk production. And there are several research that indicate that data. For example, Holstein's cows exposed to heat stress during milk lactation tend to reduce the dry matter intake by 10%, affecting the milk yield by 49%. And then when we talk about small ruminants, that use exposed to heat stress during lactation also can reduce the milk production by 25%. And then when we apply a cooling system, we can observe an increase on milk fat, protein, and lactose yield, and also the concentration of the milk protein tend to increase. But not only the lactation is affected by heat stress, but also the dry period. We know that the dry period is a no lactating period where the mammary gland is preparing for the next lactation, right? But also that period is affected by heat stress. And for example, we can observe a decrease in the mammary epithelial cells, an increase on apoptosis, a decrease on proliferation, and also the cellular morphology tend to change. For example, the connective tissue increase, affecting the alveolar proportion. So not only the lactation is affected by heat stress, but also the pregnancy or gestation. So in ruminants, it is well known that the peak of the placental growth occurs during mid-late gestation. And also it's well known that the ruminant placental is an endocrine organ that transfers the oxygen and nutrients to the fetus, also dispel heat and waste, and support the fetal growth and development. However, when a small ruminant is exposed to heat stress, specifically during late mid-gestation, we can observe a decrease in placental mass. And that decrease in placental mass will reduce the fetal glucose by 21% to 33%. And also the oxygen destined for the fetus also decreased by 25% to 46%, resulting in fetal growth restricted animals. But that is not the only thing that we can observe when an animal is exposed to heat stress. Also, we can observe some metabolic problems such as hypoxemia, hypoglycemia, a high concentration of catecholamines, which are the stress hormones, right? And that increase catecholamines concentration also decrease the beta cells. And that decrease in beta cells will affect the insulin secretion. And then the insulin secretion will affect the growth performance. And then let's say that the lamb survived, the fetus survived, and now we have an offspring. In that offspring, we can observe lighter birth weight, an increase in morbidity, a decrease in survival rate, and also the carcass tray is affected by heat stress. And that is because, again, as I mentioned before, the size of the placental tend to decrease by 56%, and also the fetus weight tend to decrease. The real question here is, are tooth problems persist through the animal's life? Well, if you ask me, my answer is going to be yes, but we have to conduct more research about it, and that is another line of research that the University of Virgin Islands will take. So not only the lactation, the gestation, and pregnancy is affected by heat stress, but also the muscle growth. We know that growth is defined as an increase in mass involving hyperplasia and hypertrophy, where hyperplasia is just cell multiplication and hypertrophy is cell enlargement, right? When an animal is exposed to heat stress, both of the two processes are affected, resulting in slow growth rate. And why that is happening? Because we can observe an increase of catecholamines, which are the stress hormones, and those increase on catecholamines will increase glycogenolysis and also will inhibit glycogenesis. Also, we can observe a decrease on feed intake, decrease in fertility, a negative impact in carcass quality and composition that will affect the market's weights. But not only the growth performance is affected, but also the quality of the meat. The literature indicates that when an animal is exposed to heat stress, that depends on the stage of production, but normally we can observe dark, firm, and dry meat. and also the ultimate pH is affected, and the rate of that pH as well is affected by heat stress. So now back to my question, why can St. Croix white-haired sheep represent the future? If we are talking about an animal that has good characteristic about parasite infection, milking production, and meat production and quality. Well, there is where the new direction of the University of Virgin Islands enter. We are going to focus our facility to understand the physiology of heat stress based on the parasite infection, milking production, and meat production on St. Croix white-haired sheep. We want to understand why this animal is really good with heat stress, and in the future, probably we can define if that breed is going to be a heat tolerant or is just an animal that do very well with heat stress. Also, we want to focus on of the research to find a way to mitigate the heat stress, but also in a way to improve the parasite infection, milking production, meat production, and meat quality. And this is something more personal. I want to work with genomics. I want to identify parasite and heat stress gene in these breeds. Okay, so now let's talk about the small ruminant facility at the University of Virgin Islands. So something that I want to be very clear is that I started this position almost 2 years ago. So when I started this position, including the animals, the laboratories, and the farm were under poor condition. So it has been 2 hard years for me. My staff and I, we are working very hard to improve the animals, the flock, the laboratories, including the farm. So the farm consists in 40 acres of pasture, which are divided into 3 pasture, A, B, and C. So C pasture, we already finished with the C pasture. We changed all the line, the fence lines, the water lines, and everything. Now my staff is currently working on B pasture, and for A pasture, guess what? I don't like it, so I will change everything. So I will change all of the system because what I don't like is, let me see, is this area, right? Because it's kind of hard to move animals. And also the old system just have 2 water trough for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pastures. So that doesn't make any sense, right? So for example, one water trough is here and the other is here. So if I have a group of animals here, I cannot have another group of animals here, right? Because when they are going to drink water, they will mix it, okay? So I will change all of that system. But now this is done. My staff is working on this pasture. And then we have a building, which is the new building here. And then we have 2 laboratories designated for the animal science program, which are in this building. One is going to be focused on physiology of heat stress, and the other is going to be focused on parasites, okay? This is a couple of pictures of the new building that we have. We have a barn, which is this building, and this is inside, right? Also, we have an office and a bathroom. We have 4 containers. I am super fan of the containers, so I will continue to use containers. Each container has a purpose. However, we have one inside the building. And in that container, I use that container to put all the stuff regarding research. But in the future, I will do a mini lab, okay? In that way, I don't need to walk from the farm to the building to analyze the data. In this part of the building, we have a scale and a turnover crate, and there is where normally we do all the livestock tasks, such as hoof trimming, dewormer, vaccination, and all of this. And then in both sides of this building or this area, we have around 15 pens with automatic water truck. And there is where normally I do the heat stress research. And I will show you why. So this is a simple map about that area of the building. Here is the scale and the holding pen. Those are the pens. On the pens, I put shade cloths. And then I can remove 2 shade cloths if I need it. And not only that, I can play with the percent of shade. So if I will do a research about evaluate different shade percent, I can do it. So for example, right now, I believe that these pens are 50% shade, and this is like 75% shade, okay? So I can play with that. So this is a couple of pictures of the pasture that we have right now. This picture was taken of bee pasture. So all of these lines are bee pasture. I don't know if you can see a white spot there. Let me see if I can use the, it's gonna be like this. There are some white spots. Well, those are the St. Croix, and these pasture are the C pasture. And here on this side, we have the A pasture. This is how the C pasture are looking right now. And the goal is to have the whole farm looking in that way by the end of this year. Okay, so now let's talk about the animals that we have. We have 5 groups of animals, okay? The first one is the rams. So we have around 8 St. Croix per breed rams. How the rams work in our facility, we have, or we use 2 animals per group of ewe. That means that a ram is destined for just one group of ewe, and we don't use that ram on another group. It's gonna be always the same ram or the other one, because we have 2 per group. We just use the ram for a couple of years, meaning 2-3 years, and after that we replace the ram, okay? We have other rams, but they are a crossbreed between St. Croix and Dorper, okay? So the other group that we have are the ewes. So on the ewes, we have the A flock and the B flock. And within the A flock and B flock, we have subgroups. For example, on A flock, we have A1, A2, A5, and A6, and B1, and B flock, we have B1 and B2. And again, each of those groups has 2 rams that we use just for a couple of years, and after that, we just remove the ram and put another one, right? So not all of the group of ewes are St. Croix. For example, in A flock, I have some animals from the crossbreed, right? So in this picture, this is a group of ewe, pregnant ewes. This is my favorite group. For me, if you ask me, this is the best group that we have. Here, there are some animals that I don't want, and I will eliminate those very soon. For example, here you can see an animal with a piece of wool. I don't want that. So we start a selection plan, and we are going to eliminate that as well. And here we have another one. But for me, this animal is amazing, looks amazing, and as well this one. And this is just a mama with her twins, right? We have a lot of twins. I cannot say that we have a lot of triplets, because one of the things that I noticed when I started in this position is that triplets do not survive in our farm. I don't know why. So I took the decision to select only moms that gave us twins. In the future, we are going to start selecting triplets, but for now, it's just twins. Another group that we have are the winegers. So how the winegers work in our facility. So we study the vinegar or the sheep from day 1 until 6 months old. Okay, why I am doing that? Because I start a selection plan. So we are trying to improve the St. Croix white-haired sheep flock at the University of Virgin Islands. In that way, when we finish with the university, we are going to start with the local farmers. So why I am looking in that selection program, first, the color. I just select, and probably a couple of you won't be happy with my decision, but I just select white animals, because we are talking about St. Croix white-haired sheep. So for me, the animals need to be white, right? I don't mind if it has like a small spot of color. I don't mind that. The other characteristic is not present of wool. I don't want wool. The average daily gain, I am taking in consideration the average daily gain. I just select animals that gain 100 grams per day. Actually, we have animals gaining 200 to 300 grams per day. So we are just selecting those animals. Of course, we are taking in consideration the record. We keep record of each animals that we have on our farm. So for us, it's very easy to know if an animal is related with other. So records, of course, I take in consideration if that animal is a singleton, a twin, or a triplet. If it's a triplet, if the 3 lambs survive. If just one survive, I won't take that animal. What else? And of course, we are taking in consideration the parasite infection incidence. Every like 20 days, we are collecting data about parasite infection, FAMACHA, blood samples to check the anemia, and of course, the fecal head counts. That is because we are doing a research where we are using the data as well to select the animals, right? So what happens if we have an animal that meets all of that characteristics that I mentioned? That animal can be part of the regular flock. If we have an animal that doesn't meet all the characteristics that I am looking, we can sell that animals as a genetic to the local farmers. Okay, the local farmers are my priority. And then after that, we do collaborations. For example, we are working in a collaboration with the University of Puerto Rico. I will donate some animals, a couple of animals to the university. In that way, they can start to do research with the breed. If we don't have an animal that is a good animal, it's just a bad animal, doesn't have any characteristic that I am looking, I just grow that animal and donate the meat to charities. Okay, the other group are the winner boys. We have a group of winner boys and the system is the same. The selection system is the same. We don't have a group of lambs. I just put this picture here in that way you can see how the baby lambs are looking. The baby lambs just remain with their mom, and right now all the lambs that we have are on the research, okay? So how many animals do we have on the small ruminant facility? We have around 100 adult animals and like 50 lambs. But right now all the lambs are in research because I work with feeder programming. So for me, babies are a team. Okay, so I don't know how much do you know about this situation. Is the tropical bounty situation. So in the past, the Virgin Island has a huge problem with this tick, a really huge infection. And guess what? That infection returned right away. I start in this position. So that was my first problem to manage. A couple of farms remain under quarantine. However, our farm is not part of that problem. We never had a bone tick infection. However, one of the things that I did last year was to invite an entomologist from Texas A&M, and she provided us a seminar about bone tick, tropical bone tick situation, tropical bone tick, and as well ticks in general, right? And not only that, my staff had the opportunity to take a training with her. In that way, they learn how to identify and collect ticks, specifically the bone tick, on a farm. So why I mentioned this? Because I want to be very clear that we don't have that problem. And if in the case in the future we had that problem, my staff are very prepared to take action. But our farm wasn't part of that situation. And also we have protocol with scratch and spray the animal every 2 months. So the small ruminant facility on campus is not the only facility that I have under my charge. Also, I have other facility. I have the Senepal farm, which is a 400 acres ranch. And also I have another facility that is located on the west end of the island. So in that facility, we have cattle, we have sheep as well. That facility is called Arjek Farm and belongs to the Henry's family. The Henry's family was one of the first family to develop the breed, okay? So we have some Croix white-haired sheep in that farm, but those animals are extremely old. So we are talking about animals about, I don't know, they are like 12 years old. So those animals are extremely old. I cannot use that. I am writing a proposal to use those animals to do a compost research. A compost research is just like a extension research. In that way, we can use the body of the animal to improve the soil. But yeah, so, but I don't have any use for those animals. So one of the things that we are going to do, we are going to replace the sheep flock with fresh animals. And also we are going to use part of the farm as a hay production farm. We want to produce our own hay. And in the future, I have in my plan to do a goat farm. In that, a goat. Okay, so now I'm super sure. Yeah, I'm super sure. So now let's talk about the ongoing research that is happening right now on the University of Virgin Islands. So the first research that we are working is to develop a new crossbreed between St. Croix and Dover. Okay, I know that Dr. Godfrey developed a crossbreed between St. Croix and the Dorper breed. However, that crossbreed was just focused on growth performance, and not only that, those rams were brought from a cold weather. So what that means that those animals were not acclimated to the tropical weather in St. Croix. So now we want to develop a new crossbreed between the St. Croix and the Dorper. However, in this occasion, we are going to focus on parasite infection, heat tolerance, and growth performance. So we are taking in consideration all of those parameters. And not only that, I am using that data to start the selection plan to improve the St. Croix white-haired sheep flock that we have on the small ruminant facility. And also, I will eliminate the old crossbreed, and I will maintain, after we finish with the study, we are going to maintain just a small group of the new crossbreed, because our focus is going to be just the St. Croix white-haired sheep. The other research that I am working on is about the impact of maternal heat stress on growth performance and hormone stress profile on St. Croix white and St. Croix white crossbreed with the Dorper. And in this occasion, I will use just the offspring. So I will put the pregnant ewe under heat stress during middle-age gestation, and then I will take in consideration the physiological parameters, the vaginal temperature, and the catecholamines hormone profile. And then, a lamine, we are going to study the placenta. I will do a several research with the placenta, and then we are going to keep the offspring. We are going to separate the mom from the baby, and we are going to keep the offspring, and then we are going to conduct a growth performance research and the hormone stress study. Why? Because I want to understand the physiology of heat stress in this specific breed. Because one of the questions that I have is that, for example, we know that the St. Croix white-haired sheep is a really good breed with parasite. However, the literature indicates that the heat tolerance characteristic and the parasite resistant characteristic are antagonists. So what that means, that if you have one, you cannot have the other one. So I work with these animals every day, and I can see that they are struggling with the heat stress. Not like a Dorper, not like a Catadin, but they have their issues with the heat stress. So now I want to understand what that is happening. And after that, we are going to conduct other kind of research. So also we have another extension project. So I noticed that the dewormers in St. Croix are not working, and that is because the farmers are using in a wrong way the medication. For example, the last visit that I made in a local farm, he was deworming all the animals, doesn't matter if it was a baby or a ewe, with 10 cc of dewormer. So we have that problem, and also another problem that I am presenting with the local farmer is that they don't keep records. They neither identify the animals. They don't believe on air tags and neither proofs, so they don't do that. And also the general information about not only parasite infection, but livestock in general was limited for them. And now the university is trying to do a better job with that, okay? So how I am doing this project? Well, I just go to the farm and talk with the farmer about, I ask about their parasite control, what they are doing. And after that, I take fecal samples and famacha on random animals. For example, the last visit that I did, he has like 300 animals. So I just select 20 animals, right? Because I won't do all of that. And then after that, I ask the farmer to deworm the animals as they usually do. I don't want that they change anything. And yeah, so, and then after that, after 11 days, I return to the farm, take samples again, take famacha, and I perform a fecal egg count reduction test. And after that, I wrote a report, and then I give that report to the veterinarian, and the veterinarian is supposed to do a parasite control plan for that specific farm, taking in consideration the necessity, the limitation, and the resources that that local farmer has, right? So that's mean that each farmer that participate in this program will have their own personal parasite control plan.
You return 11 days after they deworm?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, in that way I can see if the dewormer is working or not. Okay, so what is going to be the future of the research at the University of Virgin Island? Of course, we will continue working with parasite infections, and also I am working in a grant with the University of Puerto Rico to do some research about ways to mitigate this parasite infection in St. Croix. But again, I want to add the heat stress topic. Also, of course, I will continue to do it heat stress and feeder programming research. And then I want to fill all of that lack of knowledge that we have regarding the milk production. But also I will add the heat stress. As you can see, I will add the heat stress on everything. And also I want to do some studies about meat production, meat quality, taking in consideration the heat stress. And again, I want to identify heat stress and parasite genes in this breed in St. Croix white-haired sheep. And currently I am working with the University of Arizona. We will do a genomic research using St. Croix white-haired sheep. And that is everything that I have for you. I know it was a short presentation, but again, we are starting again with this project. Probably next year I will have more to talk. But yeah, that is my contact information. If you have any question, just ask me. Go ahead.
Is there a reason that the farmers on the island are treating for parasites? Are they just doing it out of the modern, we're just treating, or are they having a problem with parasites?
Both. They have problem with parasite. They don't want to do famacha. They don't want to check the eyes. They just want to deworm all the animals. Doesn't matter if the animal has an infection or not. They don't do, for example, I have farmers. I have a really good relation with the farmers, but I have some farmers that they have the land, but they don't want to spend the work to do rotational grazing. And then I have other farmers that do rotational grazing, but they just keep the animals a month in the same pasture. And then most of the farmers, for example, they just pick a day at the month to say, okay, I will deworm all the animals. Doesn't matter if the animal has an infection or not. For example, in our farm, we do not deworm our animals. I mean, we have some parasite problem with lambs because as he explained in his presentation, the lambs are more, I don't know, they are just creating the immune system. But with the adult animals, we don't deworm those animals. They are doing okay. And I took samples, I took fecal samples, and I cannot find parasite infection. But now I know why. So So yeah, they with the farmers, it's just like they don't want to do the job. They just want a special medication to eliminate the parasite infection. For that reason, I am doing that project because with that project, I can show them that actually they have a problem. Because if I just go and say no, because you need to do rotational grazing, where is the data?
Of your youth walk, about how many or what percentage of them are still pure St. Croix? Because you mentioned how many rams you have.
We will know. We will know with the project that I am doing with the University of Arizona. That is one of the goals. I will run genetic tests on all the animals that we have because I want to know what we have. I know that we have good animals, but I want to be very sure that if we are going to sell an animal to the state, I want to give all the information that we have about that animals. Again, I have records of all the animals in the farm, but it's just like bird weight, lambing day, basic information. I want to go more deep about it. And for that, we are going to do genomic.
So you don't know how many of them are pure St. Croix?
No, probably, I mean, I know what they told me.
Yeah.
I mean, if you ask me how many St. Croix white-haired sheep we have like 80 animals. However, if we talk about genetics, we will know. We will know.
How large would you estimate the total population of St. Croix sheep in the Virgin Islands?
Oh, it is big. It's big. Actually, the small ruminant production in Virgin Island is the biggest production in Virgin Island. So St. Croix has most of the small ruminant production right now. I can say that we have around 200 farms right now. But okay, but sometimes those farms just have 3-4 animals. Others have a lot of animals, like 200, 300 animals, but we have a lot of farms. Actually, if we compare with Puerto Rico, I don't know if, let me see if I can go back. No, I cannot go back. But San Croix is smaller than Puerto Rico, and we have more small ruminant production than Puerto Rico. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like the fact that this presentation is coming.
Exactly.
I happen to come something that is quite interesting. I want to know what temperature range you have in St. Croix.
For example, it's changed with the day, but I can say that probably during lunchtime or like 11 in the morning, it can reach the 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, but the temperature is not the trick here; it's the humidity. We have a high percent of humidity, and that is the trick. That is what provoked the heat stress. Yeah.
Like what, so what's, sorry, what, tell me about the humidity then, what is that?
Oh, it can be 80.
Okay.
It can be 80. Yeah.
Excellent.
It is a lot. It is a lot. You have another question?
Yeah, I have so many, but I want to take it one after the other. Now you have that temperature about 100 Fahrenheit high humidity. What kind of research is stress trying to? Are you doing something like genomic selection?
Yeah, I just want to identify genes related with heat stress and heat tolerance. What I will do after that, I don't know. I need to dream about it and then I will have the idea, but I don't know. So what kind of research? You can do a lot of research with heat stress. You can do nutritional research. For example, you can conduct research to prove a couple of diet to see if that diet can help the animal to mitigate the heat stress. For example, one of the things that one of my undergrad students wants to do, I mean, I'm not happy with, I mean, I'm happy with his idea, but not all. So he wants to try different level of proteins on animals infected with parasite under heat stress. So
Complicated.
it is complicated. We will start this next week that research. So that is the kind of research that you can do.
Okay. Preliminary research, have you been able to look at this kind of selection for upgrading of St. Croix with livestock, sheep, particularly those ones?
Well, this is my first time working with St. Croix. In the past, during my PhD, I worked with Brahmas. So one of the things that I did with the Brahmas was to try a grow, what is the name? A Silmax. Silma is a growth promoter. So I use a growth promoter on Brahmas to see if the growth promoter helped the animal to mitigate the heat stress and see if they grow faster.
Yeah, because in Africa, we have been able to almost develop breeds that are highly heat tolerant. One of the basic breeds we have now is the Palami sheep. The Palami sheep is known to temperature up to 48, 50 degrees Celsius.
Mm-hmm.
They withstand it, they are more like a Sahel desert. I think with the tropical environment that you have, you might want to take a little, maybe look at other tropical breeds and try to, as a preliminary study,
Yeah.
to select for heat tolerant breed and cross with the St. Croix,
Mm-hmm.
and then further develop before you look at the genomics.
Yeah.
Of maybe you might have discovered.
Yeah. With that, we need to be very careful because most of those breed that we can use on the tropical has genetic from the St. Croix. And we need to be very careful that we know we don't go like 5 steps back into the genetic just to do another crossbreed. I know that the Catalan, I don't know, I'm not sure about it, but I believe that the Catalan has St. Croix genetics.
It does.
So use, I mean, I had a college that called me from Puerto Rico, Ricardo, and he told me, oh, I will send you a couple of Catalan, in that way you can do a crossbreed. And I say no, because I mean, Catalan has a St. Croix genetic. So what is going to happen? So yeah, but that is a really good idea, and that is something that we can do. For example, right now we're trying the Dorper. I'm not happy with that research. I mean, that is not my goal. But I was in conversation with just that probably I would like to try the white Dorper.
Parasite.
Just for the color.
There's some good white Dorpers. There's been some white Dorper parasite-resistant flocks that have been bred for that in Tennessee area. Tennessee Tech has a flock that has been bred, a white Dorper flock that's been bred for that. And sometimes a similar, in the summer, a similar environment. So there's, you would probably, that Dorper that you would get now for your research would be very different than the animal that got brought to you previously for the crossbreds.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And we have study out there from Dopa and the Merino sheep.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Nemaca africana, another breed that is highly resistant to ticks and beyond.
What is the University of Africa? They have a really popular university. One?
No, we have so many.
I know, well, but I know that the University of Green Island worked a lot with one of the
Yeah,
university.
so many. In fact, in my country, Nigeria.
Oh, really?
But I'm still particular that research has shown that the Nemaca africana
Mm-hmm.
is very resistant to ambient. And since we have a case of ambient, we should also try to look at because it's better than proper
Okay.
resistance. Maybe you try to read about the sheep.
Yeah, that's a really good
since you're
idea.
in a tropical environment. Because from what you said, antagonistic, you are trying to improve on heat, and then parasites is a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want that. We want them to be synergistic, right?
Mhm.
While we have good heat tolerance, we also have good tick or whatever resistance. That is why we have to do that. So maybe you will read about that. And then selecting for coat color, I think is a good one. You said be angry with you, but I don't see any reason. If I'm in a tropical environment, I'm going to select for white coat color. It's obvious because heat. You absorb, black surfaces absorb so much heat, white surfaces absorb so much and emit everything. So you are on the right track. But I'm a little bit worried. You said you select for sheep that have 100 grams a day body weight. I select for like
Average daily gain.
average daily gain of 100 grams a day. How much do they eat to give you that?
They are
Because you said you're not selecting, even those who are above maybe 200 grams, you don't select.
we are not taking in consideration the feed because those animals are grazing
I think
the
we
whole
should
day.
consider it.
I know, but how? I mean, just for one person, it's gonna be hard to make sure
No,
the
because why-
You can go work with her.
no, we are
You
just taking.
Demand.
Why I have to say this is that if my animal is consuming less, another one is consuming more, it's giving me, why would I select for?
So feed conversion. is
Feed
what you're
conversion, I
talking
can
about.
calculate the feed conversion. Right now, I'm just taking in consideration that those animals are grazing and the grass that we have are bad quality grass, so.
There's a negative consequence to selection for growth, and that's gonna be frame size. It just comes along naturally for a ride, so having a threshold that doesn't pursue maximums
Mhm.
and pursues average will keep the sheep in a frame size that is suitable for the environment that you're at, regardless of efficiency. That's the challenge with that. We're all chasing extremes to one point, but I was actually thinking it's a good idea for you to stay moderate, even on the low side,
Yeah.
just to keep frame size.
So can we now say that the price, what category of breed does it fall into? Is it dairy, is it wool?
Double
or is
purpose.
it dual purpose?
It's a dual purpose.
Which one?
The St. Croix, he is asking what purpose has the St. Croix. If it's a dairy animal or it's a meat animal, for me, it's both. It can be both.
I don't know, Chad.
I mean, it's
Feed
not,
size
I
is a
mean,
little
okay.
challenging.
It's not like a milking breed like the Alpina or the Spanish, La Española, no. But also it's a meat breed like the Dorper. So it can be both for me. But now, again, this is what I mentioned before. Where is the information about milk production on St. Croix Whitehair sheep?
You did have
Yeah, because I agree, I saw something.
the Katahdin versus St. Croix
Mhm.
had that, on a slide, correct? Did they take in, and I would love to see that slide again, to see if they took
I don't know how to
in
do this.
consideration the size of the animal, the weight of the animal in the milk production. The ratio.
Yeah, for that, probably for that reason, we don't have significant difference in that result.
Parity is probably more important, so I think that would be the driving factor, what parity it was. And body size.
Okay.
So I don't think that's it for sheep or milk sheep.
Right,
I mean, that's
but
not their function.
what we want them to be able to do though would be,
Wean lambs,
yes.
right? Okay.
If, be able to raise those triplets
And to
without,
generate a meat product.
yes, yeah,
That doesn't require a lot of excessive input.
right, yes, that is what we want them to do, and if they are as prolific and producing, when Cole Evans came last night, he said they had huge problems
Mhm.
with the sheep producing 3.1 lambs per litter.
Yep.
And that was, they were so prolific that they had a hard time raising those lambs. And so I think that the milk production relates to that as much. If they're gonna have them, I want them to raise them.
Right, but that's gonna vary with climate, temperature,
Yes.
all of those kind of things that are gonna affect ovulation rate, talking
Yes.
about this and talk about that more than I can.
Mhm.
But in your environment, it's pretty static.
Yes, yes.
So ovulation rate may not be super high as a function of heat stress,
Mhm.
right? So you may have average ovulators and be okay with a 200% lamb crop or even 175 lambs in that case, which would be okay,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, that is correct.
I mean, it's all about kind of searching for averages and some of that stuff, which becomes more difficult than what I get to play with is extremes.
Mhm.
I would think the frequency of triplets is
low enough that you don't need an average ewe to produce enough to support three animals. You just need.
I think that people probably select for or against it.
Outcome of selection for that is gonna take many generations to realize.
I personally don't want triplets.
Me neither.
Right.
At the very best, if she produces enough milk to support them, one of them's gonna be able to.
Well, and if they're producing enough milk for triplets and they have twins and then you wean them and now you've got a mastitis
And
concern.
you have the access to feed supplements that she doesn't.
Right.
To support milk production.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not selecting for triplets, trust me, but I had a line of sheep that were triplet producers and they did fine, but in looking at this, I'm just trying to understand, they just wanted to compare just the two breeds.
Mm-hmm.
And the total goal was to see who produces more milk.
Quality of milk.
And the
They
quality
did
of the milk as
They
well.
got colostrum.
They did
Well,
colostrum.
this is just volume, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, they just trying to study the milk production and colostrum production in both breed. I didn't do this. I mean, that was not my research.
Their colostrum volume is much lower than other breeds.
Interesting, but
The thickness and the consistency of it is much more viscous than it is in other breeds.
okay,
So
per
now,
milliliter,
it is more concentrated because there's less volume.
okay,
That would be my explanation for that. So if I've got I got a 200-pound Suffolk ewe, she's got colostrum for days, it's less dense, right? But the lambs are drinking so much more of it, you get the same amount. Same thing with the St. Croix lambs. You go up and milk a first parity ewe, she has a small udder. And has anybody tried to get colostrum out of those ewes before? I did a whole research project on colostrum in St. Croix ewes. It was horrible.
yes.
To try to milk, to squeeze the
Yes.
syrup out of their teeth.
Mhm.
At lambing, it's really rough. They
Yes.
don't have a whole lot of volume.
No.
But it's very dense.
Mhm.
So it gets tricky when you're comparing breeds like that because there's an obvious size there, but relative to pounds of body weight, right?
And I guess that's just all that their research, they got paid to do this research and that's all they had to do. That was,
Well, I mean, they're studying differences between the breeds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you expect a Tideman's probably to have a little bit more colostrum, a little bit more milk yield than the St. Croix, right?
right.
That
was why I was interested in coming back to this to see if they did a correlation to body weight versus volume and, like per pound,
Mm-hmm.
milk per pound.
Yeah, they have a
They
different.
didn't follow through with that. That was my question when I asked to see the
Oftentimes,
video.
if you just select for like 30-day weights, that's a really good indicator of milk yield.
Mhm.
And so by choosing higher average yearly gain and weights at 30 days, you know you're moving that way up in milk yield. So there's a lot of correlations with these genetic markers that by choosing one for one thing, you're also choosing the other.
Okay.
The real trick, like Scott's saying, is you take the average and you slowly try to move the whole average, right, with the antagonistic effects. And so, I think the Charqui Association is really good fining up their wool and increasing muscling, which are two antagonistic traits.
Right.
And so, depending on what we're going to focus on as a group, there needs to be clear objectives of, well, what's the focus of the breed, and then together with NSIP and everything else, that's how you really make progress with the breed. So
Just moving the average.
yeah.
Was there any sense that the reason you were even measuring this is to see if you could produce fresh sheep milk on the island, or was it purely, how many lambs can they raise and how fast can we get them to grow as an, average daily growth? Or were you actually looking at producing milk?
There are some farmers that want to produce milk for cheese.
Okay.
So yeah, that is one of the questions that I want, or the problem that I want to solve, because they don't have an idea what to do. and they want to use the St. Croix. So yeah.
I still want to what you said from that. Is it that are they actually very good when it comes to training and having treatments?
Yes.
They're quite good.
It's always twin.
I call it, if a ewe has 2 singles, the first year they can have a single. If they have a single the next year, I call it.
Yeah.
Because it is rare, and it is rare. It is rare. I kept one for 3 years, and I said, okay, if you don't twin this year, you're gone. She twinned that year and had a single the year after, and she was gone.
Joseph ours outside are very inbred, and they still drop to 200% crop this year. So,
Yeah, because I was wondering if the cholesterol level is very low. It may have some kind
But the
of-
quality is better, right?
Yeah, so it's, the volume is, the concentration of
It's
what's
better.
there is very high, would be my expectation. I don't know that for certain. That would be my guess.
Yeah, actually, having gotten colostrum from my Dorpers and from my St. Croix, I would absolutely say there is a difference. Not much of a difference, but now that you mention it and I think about it, yeah.
So there's the challenge for everybody, planting season this year. you had milk
I'm
every day.
You're gonna have your undergraduate do it on that first day. I am so thankful I was not one of your students. I would have paid.
You know, there are dairy cows, and you can actually milk dairy cows, but you can't really milk a beef cow that's been taken in off the range. I don't know that it's fair to take a St. Croix and say, oh, let's try and milk her, which it's never happened before. So, you know, I mean, what you get is sometimes related to what they're letting down, what they're releasing.
Absolutely.
So all I'm saying is that, you know, if you handle these the same way, that's a valid comparison. But just saying St. Croix can't milk.
I don't think that's what it's saying. I think that it's just saying that this is what we expect from them in terms of their milk production. We're not saying that they absolutely can't do that, because as soon as you start measuring it, you can start making improvements towards that, right? And milk production is a highly heritable trait, at least in other species it is, so there's no reason that we couldn't expect some
Right.
improvement.
So they're making room for some sheep milk production on island.
Or a crossbreed,
That's the desired outcome.
or a crossbreed.
There.
But you would also need to select for the right teats, because
Mhm.
teat shape and size and position is a big time. I mean, there's,
And it's
I'm guessing more to this, what does milk cost on the island?
Yes.
What is the what?
What does milk cost, the price of milk?
Milk cost?
Yeah.
We don't produce milk on the island.
That's why this is
So you're importing.
We import everything. Yeah, we don't produce. The only thing that we can produce, of course, is fish and some, I don't know, beef meat, something like that, beef meat, ground beef, things like that. And the Senegal industry also is disappearing. So, and of course, we have a lot of people that eat lamb and goat. For that reason, we have a really huge number of farms that produce small ruminants animals. Yeah, but yeah, we don't produce milk. And those people or those farmers that want to produce milk, it's just for cheese.
okay, I think I'm gonna cut us off.
Yeah.
Take a break for a while. Maybe we can do some impromptu tours for anyone who won't be here tomorrow. And actually, I should probably take the mic from you just to clear up things. Those of us who joined us, thank you online. But we're gonna go ahead and close this session, and we will open up the Zoom link again tomorrow morning, probably around 7:30 a.m. 8 a.m. we have the USDA scientist from the Predator Research Station, Dustin Ranglak, and his colleague talking about predation and a lot of the research they're doing right now. And they'll talk about coyotes, raptors, a lot of different things. So please join us then, and we will see you at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thank you. Bye. Oh, yes, I will log back in. And we will go ahead and play the video with Dr. foot tonight. So I will do that, but we'll go ahead and we will do that at 6 o'clock. So 45 minutes from now, we will play that video. Okay. Thank you. We will log off and then log back in. Okay. Bye.